I'd like to welcome Francesca Busca to this episode of Artist Tales. She's an eco-artivist, rubbish artist, and waste mosaicist, and her work challenges our relationship with consumption and the materials we discard. Since 2017, she has created all her artworks entirely from waste, transforming scraps, debris, and unrecyclable materials into what she calls trashure. So welcome, Francesca. It's lovely to have you.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you. Now let's start at the beginning then.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us a bit more about you? Because I find it fascinating that you started off as a solicitor in the city of London, and are now an artist. So how was that journey? Like, what happened?
Okay, so we're going back to the very beginning. Yes. So my background is actually in the classics, dead languages really, and then the law. So I've been a city solicitor for a while, and then I had my children, and I decided I was gonna be the one to make them grow, to be with them whilst they were growing, basically. But then, of course, I wanted to go back to work. You go insane otherwise. People don't realize working for a mother is good. No, I love them to bits. But anyway, I wanted to go back to work, obviously. But I just thought at this point, I'm not going to go back to law, but I'm going to go back to what I really like doing, which is art. Actually, ever since I was little, I would sell the paintings and the drawings on the street, or I'd go and take the used wax from the churches, from the trays, take it home, reheat it in a tin, really. Nowadays they'll call social services, I guess. Letting my children do that. But, and then I would just sculpt it. And then even when I was a city solicitor, I would model clay like frantically, really. I think it was a way to, let it out. Art is very therapeutic, as we know, in all of its forms, I guess. And then when I wanted to go back to work, I remember actually taking the children again to Aquileia, which is this big basilica in Italy, from the Roman times, where they keep discovering new layers of mosaics, Roman mosaics. And next to it, there was a little shop with some pre-cut tiles to make, your own mosaic, marble tiles. And I remember I was hooked. I think I spent 5 days, day and night, working on it. I wouldn't know when, when it was day or night, if I had eaten, when was the last time I slept. Because, of course, actually, there was a trip on the way to my my parents-in-law, where I left them for a few days. So that was completely my time. And I used it all on this, and I was hooked. So as soon as I went back to London, I found a place where to do mosaics, and then I graduated in it, at the London School of Mosaic. I also lectured fabrication there. But then from that, I moved on to doing what I do now, which is basically using waste, replacing these precious materials with waste to plunder less Mother Earth, really. So as prime material, not just to make a point, which I also do, but I started just by using them instead of, this marble and smalty and ceramics and glass and what have you. And then, of course, to me, art is the closest to universal language. And so it is essential to develop empathy between us and to communicate. And that's why also I think it's, the best form of expression to identify what a society was like in the past or, is now. And so I think it's also, again, has a big social impact. And so that's why I use art to, again, develop empathy towards life and all of its forms. And also, to advocate for a systemic change that I believe we really need to have from this disposable and anthropocentric society to one that's based on the common good of the whole, of all creatures, So I hope that answered the question.
I think it does. I think it really does. Before we start exploring why you're drawn to waste and using that material, I'm quite interested in some of the words I used in the introduction, like eco-artivist, rubbish artist, and waste mosaicist. So those are kind of your self-descriptions.
Yes.
So why?
Yes, you hit I think the nail on the head here, because they all have a reason for being there. So eco-artivism is my philosophy, right, which I just explained. Whilst the rubbish artist, or actually trashure artist, is the material I use, right? So I only use rubbish, but actually it's trashure, because in my view, it becomes something precious. Do you see? Not something that has to be discarded or disposed of as soon as possible, but rather something that has meaning and value, and intrinsic value as well, for being what it is already. So, and then waste mosaicist is my style, which is actually a niche, very niche style, being the only one I know of in the world actually who does that. And in fact, I just had someone from New Zealand coming to interview me from the Mosaic Association over there. And so having said that, mosaicists are quite good in that sense. I think even historically, Romans would use all the waste they had, like broken terracotta or amphoras to make tiles for their mosaics. So they would reuse as much as possible. Having said that, nowadays they will do that with crockery, but still they are quite limited, I think, in scope because of what mosaics is, first of all, but also because they still see it as somewhat traditional tiles. So they have to be, hard, they have to be of a similar height, and they have to be able to stick with the same adhesive that you would for normal mosaic. Whilst the way I do it is, first of all, it's such a journey, but first of all, I try to use only materials that are non-recyclable. So, the less recyclable, the better. So those things that actually would end up in landfill or, being burnt, with some exceptions, of course. And secondly, adhesive-wise, I also try to use whatever I find that's more eco-friendly. I think PVA being the most eco-friendly one that you can ever possibly have. But of course, the beauty, I think, that in my journey is the discovery of, for each new item that I use, there will be a new adhesive that will work. Not everything works on everything. Plastic especially, there's hundreds of different kinds, and they will react differently to cement or PVA or whatever it is. So, but I'm enjoying that part of my journey, definitely.
And I think in some ways you've kind of answered the question I alluded to of the materials you use. So it sounds like, as you said, with the trash art, you're kind of using things that people discard to create value. And I found it interesting also with the mosaics, the waste kind of mosaics.
Actually, sorry, because again, thank you for bringing this up again. I call it what's mosaic because I actually rework the material into tiles, whether they're recognizable or not. It doesn't really matter nowadays, as long as the concept is conveyed anyway, regardless of the tiles themselves. That's just an extra step, and I do like it actually when people get close and say, oh, but what is that? And then you tell them, oh, that's an Actimate bottle, or, medicine vial, or fruit net, whatever. And they go like, oh, so I like that. But the art itself, is, whether it is, I don't know, marine, environment that I reproduce, like a precious garden, like those that we find in mythology and religion as the non plus ultra, the paradise or the Elysian fields, or you name it, just to make people understand that we can actually have it here on Earth, both above and below the waves, if only we learned how to take proper care of them. And especially the oceans at the moment are in a very critical state. So it's more of a nowadays, it's more like our memory of it, our idea, idyllic, idea of this world under the waves, which is actually dying. So it's quite a critical moment right now, I think, to face this issue.
There's so many things that pop into mind, but I think the thing that came in my mind initially at the first is, it sounds like your work, whether it's the mosaics or other type of art that you do, is kind of a starting point for a conversation. So, people can say, well, what is that? Which then can lead into other things, around ecology, how we treat the earth, how we treat each other. have you, that's to me what it sounds like. Is that something you've experienced?
I'm so glad you say this, actually, because yes, to me, art is a dialogue. So much so that most of the time, if I have a PV, a private viewing, I would just say, art is a dialogue, come and engage. That will be my line to get people in. Because again, I'm also an activist when I can. I'm part of, for example, Project One Wave, which is this network of people created mainly by Captain Paul Watson Foundation, which contains marine biologists, businesses, artists, activists, you name them, who are all together for the common good and actually to solve plastic pollution in the ocean. And so that's exactly what I do. I actually believe that if we want to make a change, and grow this wave of change, as we like to call it, we have to connect all sectors of society. And there's nothing better to do that than art itself as a starting point. Art is what gets people going, gets the people opening up instinctively as well, because that is the beauty of art. Not only visual art, it could be music, it could be theater. It just opens you up without you realizing how fast and how efficiently it can do so, right? I mean, good art, I think, is that in just few seconds it brings you to something else. It brings you to a feeling, it brings you to a memory, it brings you to a whole concept, then just the whole world opening up. And that's when marine biologists come in. Art can actually bridge the two worlds very well, which is what I did actually with the Institute of Marine Sciences in Venice, where I had a year-long collaboration and then a residency, and I'm still actually collaborating with them whenever I can. And so that's also the only way I think we can close this circle of sustainability, for as much as I hate that word because it's overused and no one really knows what it is. Not many people have even heard of Earth Overshoot Day, which is the day in which, we've used up the resources we are allowed to use for that year, meaning that can be replenished in time, But anyway, so if we want to close the circle of sustainability, we need to know what happens to that object or that thing, that system, that whatever it is, before it enters our world and after, when it leaves it. It's a matter of knowledge and responsibility, I guess, that we all need to take if we want to all sort out this crisis, shall we call it crisis. And also, not only, I realize, sorry, I keep on going, but I think this is essential. And it's all about the dialogue again, there really is a huge power in numbers. And I only realized it actually just when I was 50 already. Imagine, it took me 50 years to realize the importance, like the length to which this saying is actually accurate. And we were with Project One Way, we were doing a beach clean in Wee Cambrai, which is this beautiful paradise island actually up in Scotland. We started collecting all these plastic and rubbish on the beach. And I remember I collected one cap, in plastic cup, and it disintegrated under my, in my hand. And because it was so brittle, and I felt so guilty because I followed all these little bits that had fallen onto the beach in between the sand, and I checked and I saw that there were so many others. And then, looking down, I just saw it was full all the way to the sea, and that's when I realized how mercilessly, it had infiltrated our system, nature, and how irrevocably. Almost, and I felt so powerless. And I would have left it there, quite frankly, thinking, what am I doing? There's just no point. It's just, a little drop in the ocean. But then looking around and seeing all these other 30-something people around me all together gave me such strength and such, I started believing again somehow. And that's what we need. That's what I think. There is such a unifying strength, honestly, in numbers, in communities. And I think the way out of this crisis really is from communities. building communities that can help each other, collaborate, rather than, hating each other and dividing and fighting over drops of water. It works much better, if we collect the water together and, one collects it, the other filters it, etc., etc. Just to give you, a little example. Hopefully we won't get to that, but if we do.
Well, I think we're seeing elements of it in many ways where, so as you're talking, I was thinking too, we're seeing increasingly very drastic environmental, like weather, the environmental impact of like more extreme weather, and it's not just affecting, from a kind of, if you're sitting in what's often called the Western world, it's not just, it's over there in Africa or in Asia. It's actually affecting everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, it's disproportionately affecting the poor nations and poor people.
Yes.
But it's now starting to affect everybody. And we're seeing parts of, let's say, California in forest fires. Yes. And, and it can very easily descend into you fighting over those droplets of water.
Yes. No, and actually, they are already fighting for water in courts at the moment, in Italy, in Europe, in the US, as you know, they are really fighting over rivers. And it will become quite paramount, I think, collaboration rather than, division. So we shall see. I really do believe that is essential, which is also the reason why, sorry, maybe I'll preempt some of the questions you wanted to ask, but which is also the reason why I also created this collective.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Which I'm so excited about, which really follows the same principle as Project One Way. It's just starting with art and artists rather than science, say, and activists. So we'll talk more about that later, maybe. But
no, tell me more about the collective, and could you also remind me of the name of it as well?
Yes, it's called Greenie Bastards.
Okay. Love the name.
Someone said once you hear it. Yes, but basically we want to make a difference through kind but determined activism. Artivism, actually, rather, but... Sorry. And what we're doing is, we do various things, but let's just say that it all revolves mainly around one event that we do each year, which this year will be in June, between the 18th and the 28th in London at the Building Centre off Tottenham Court Road during London Climate Action Week. So it will be a 10-day exhibition, which actually, it revolves around 6 urgencies that we've identified, say. So we'll have I think overall 24, 30 artists dealing with each one of these urgencies. And for each of them, there will be some scientists who will be there to give the facts and, ready to answer any question that the public might have. We will have academics. We will have activists, businesses, again, lots of people from all sorts. And they will be speaking at the last weekend where we have lots, again, of events, panels, Q&A, workshops, etc. So, I hope we'll get to get lots of people to come, and join us, really, because it's, again, as you say, it's a dialogue that will keep on going.
And I was just thinking as you're talking, I think like what you're saying, something like climate or something like the ecosystem seems massive, and it's in many ways unfathomable, I think, for many people. And I think many...
Yes. Oh, thank you for that as well. Because in fact, that's another thing that I want to do, exactly that. Because, we talk a lot. We do things, but we all do our things individually. The point is, everyone can be an activist if only they knew what they could do. Most of the time, when I give the eco-artivist talks, I notice that there's people who already are involved one way or another in doing something. They just don't know how to amplify it, how to do it properly, or what they could do if, they have the time, but they don't know how. So at these events, we will have like an interactive game that people will play before leaving, whereby we will narrow down their answers, and we we'll give them at the end of it a couple of things that they can do actively as soon as they walk out to the door, or even before, whether it is, joining a local cleaning group, whether it is becoming a member of an activist organization, or signing a petition. People don't realize that we only need 100,000 signatures in the UK for something to be debated in Parliament. There's how many millions in London? 100,000 is probably just a few neighborhoods. So that really can make a difference. So we'll give them, the means to find out where they can find, the petition, who is in charge of things, who they can follow to know more, etc., etc. So definitely, that is the point. Everyone can be an activist. Even from your own bed, you can be an activist. You don't need to go to these, remote islands.
And how about the people who? Because it sounds like the people, who are coming to some of these events, with the group you're involved in, already started that journey. And I was also thinking of people who perhaps think this is too overwhelming. What can I do? I'm just a little person, or
Yes.
I'm not going to make an impact. So, I mean, how do you see reaching out to them? And I guess part of that too is, does the art make it a bit more palatable is not the right word, but a little bit more accessible, a little bit more actually, even my little bit.
Yes. And you know what I think it is? It's just giving people the enthusiasm to do things. Just making them understand that everyone can do something, and everything we do matters. Everything everyone does matters. We as humans have such a huge impact on the world. We've destroyed entire ecosystems, but we've also made entire ecosystems. We've repopulated, rewilded entire deserts in areas of the world. So we also need to see that we can be a force for good. And once people realize that, I think they will start with little things. No one is perfect. Obviously, I'm a little bit of an OCD in this respect. I can't help myself. I'm vegan for many reasons, not only eco-friendly reasons. For the animals as well. Only wear second-hand clothes. I tend not to fly. I only fly when I really, really have to. I managed not to fly for 4 years in a row. Then my children said, "Mom, you do know we live in society anyway, don't you? Can we go on holiday, please, to a remote location, exotic location," which was actually Crete, which is quite close to us, but still beautiful, So now I'm a little bit more relaxed than that. And then, I only use renewable energy. There's lots of little things that we can do. We can start. Quite frankly, if I had to recommend something to someone, it would be to try to be vegan. Try to be vegan for one day, see what happens. Try to be vegan for 1 week, see what happens. Try to see what's behind actually the meat that you eat, because meat is a life. It's animals. And if we love animals, we don't kill animals. And there's no difference between a pig or a cat or a dog or a cow. They're all equally clever. If not, actually, cows and pigs tend to be even more, most likely. But but that is a personal thing. But I think we should at least open our eyes, because we have been brainwashed into believing that this is normal, but there's nothing normal about farmed animals. And emotional dissociation also has repercussions in our society. There's been a couple of studies, actually very interesting studies, one especially from a university in Germany. I don't remember exactly what age, I guess, but which actually states there is a huge correlation between the meat market and criminal behavior and violence in society in general. A bit because of emotional dissociation, of course, and a bit also because the people who work in those industries have to switch empathy off, or they wouldn't be able to do what they do. And that, of course, they bring home to their children, to their wife, to their friends. The children bring it to school, etc., etc. So it's a vicious circle that we really need to stop. And also, just to finish it off, the important thing from an eco-friendly point of view is that people don't realize that 80% of all agricultural land is actually used to make food for the animals. So, it's funny when they say, "Oh, but you vegans are deforesting the Amazon for the soy." Actually, 80% of that soy goes to feed the animals that we eat. If we all became vegans and we didn't have the animals to feed and we let them, live instead, we would be able to rewild 75% of farmland. I mean, let it sink in. 75% of farmed land, which is a huge percentage of actually the land we live on right now.
That is quite a lot. Yeah.
Our impact could be huge. And only by deciding not to eat meat, no animal products, because there is very little difference. Because there's basically the same markets anyway. Then we can make a huge difference. Let's just start by reducing them, shall we? And then see. I mean, quite frankly, my only regret is not to go vegan earlier in my life. If you ask me what regret I have, that is the one.
And it's becoming much easier as well.
Yes. Oh, I'm in awe of people who were vegan, let's say 10 years ago. I mean, I've only been to for 6 years. We, my friend and my family as well, of course, out of their own choice after we saw Seaspiracy documentary, which I recommend everyone to see. But yes, I mean, nowadays you find meat replacements that taste the same. They are actually, they're healthier as well. They have even more proteins than they do. And even if you don't, still, some of the dishes that you can have are incredible. And but even the butter, just replace the butter with, the vegan butter.
There are things you can do, yeah.
Yes, there's so many things, the milk, everything. Nowadays, it's just impossible not to be able to go vegan. And quite frankly, if you don't get the replacements, it's a lot cheaper as well, a lot cheaper.
If we come back to the art, to circle back, I'm sure we could have the whole episode on veganism. But if we come back to the art that you do, I guess what I'm interested in is, throughout your artistic career, what has influenced you? And I'm sure that has changed probably over the years of your practice. But, I'm conscious that you, for instance, you use what we would regard as waste. Obviously you're influenced to pick that type of material, those types of materials. So what are the influences, even if it's changed over the years?
It's a very good question. I think the influences are actually, let's say, two main ones. One is the object and one is the subject. So the object is the material, because some of my pieces are material driven. So, I will have, of course, I do have some focus, that I'm following in my research and my whatever, depending on whatever series, I'm focusing on. And so some will be more appropriate than others, obviously. But still, again, sometimes I have to wait for years to get enough material for something. Although now, of course, I've got a great community of people who get all the material for me, which is really good, both local and, Wigmore Street, in central London, where all the posh kitchen showrooms are, they keep all the screw caps for me, for example. They're aluminium screw caps. So it's here and there. It's when I come home and I find some of the bags, of trashure that my neighbors left, I'm just the happiest, being could be. So that is one thing that influences me a lot, the material. The other, of course, is what I want to talk about, right? And usually it's nature itself. And in fact, I'm realizing that, I've done a few residencies, but quite frankly, at the moment, the best residency that I can do is to go out and be an activist. So to go out with Captain Paul Watson Foundation, in Project One Wave, or Fish Net Zero, where they go and actually recover ghost gear from the ocean itself. I think everyone should try, because then they realize it takes a second to lose something, and it takes a whole weekend getting up at 4 a.m. and a lot of energy, with bulky items and a few divers going in just to recover a few lost ghost nets or, lobster pots. And that is actually the best research I can get. So that influences me a lot. In fact, I think that somehow I need to find a way to describe all this energy and how heavy everything is on a boat when you go out to try to recover this ghost net, that sometimes is huge as well. And I think it should be part of everyone's curriculum, actually, having to, or maybe, just a week and a month or per term, every single one should just go and do this instead of working. That will be so good for society.
I'm sure it would give many people a different perspective. And I think just listening to you talk both about the materials and the topics that you want to talk about, have you seen kind of changes or evolution in terms of, well, probably changes in material, but an evolution, changes in the material, but also an evolution in terms of what you want to talk about?
Yes. Okay. So, okay, that's very interesting, because I have to say, to me, art is research. People don't realize 50% of an artist's life is research. 30% is marketing yourself and trying to communicate it to other people. And 20%, it is actually making it. So, I like to be in my studio all the time, but unfortunately it doesn't happen. And the whole day in the studio is a luxury. But I have noticed changes in material. Unfortunately, I have to say that when sometimes some of the material, for example, the plastic, they have changed into biodegradable material, which most of the time, though, it's compostable, but most of the time it requires a special chemical reaction to happen. So some special conditions to make it happen. Therefore, it's not that you can compost everything at home in your own garden. But even those did not last much. For example, Actimel, they did some vegan Actimels, finally, in compostable, bottles. And I don't think they lasted more than maybe a year or a couple of years. So that's not good. They got rid of labels. Sorry, I'm taking one item, for example, to show you as an example.
Yeah.
Because this is quite common, I think. But, they got rid of labels on Actimel bottles, and now they just... it's engraved, basically, in the bottle, the name, and everything else you need to find it's on the sleeve around it, which is a paper sleeve. Still, if you ask me, the point is that we shouldn't be drinking Actimel bottles in the first place. Do you see? That is something that I think we could do without, because they do pollute a lot. And I don't know if you know, but plastic can only be recycled up to 2-3 times. And after that, it loses its value. And also, most of the time, only, I think, 2% of the plastic that we send to recycling, which is 9%, I think, of the whole of it, is actually recycled, because the rest is contaminated, because it's not clean enough, or it ends up, in the same bin as something else. So recycling doesn't work. Please do your best to do it, because, of course, it's still something, but it doesn't work. It was actually something that the plastic lobby paid, the oil lobby paid invested millions in, to make us believe that was the way out of the plastic crisis. They could foresee already, but it's not working. Sorry, does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it does. It's just, because I'm also thinking too, like, it's really interesting to hear that, but I was also thinking too that not only the types of things we're throwing out in terms of changes in the bottles and the plastics and stuff, but, I'm conscious that, as a consumer society, there's fashions, there's fads, you'll probably see, a lot of something over, maybe for a period of time, and then it gets replaced by something else.
Yes. Everything I'm saying here might sound very negative, but I'm just stating the truth. I think we always need to start from reality if we want to sort it out and solve it. Yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm not hopeful. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing at all. I'd rather be enjoying, my last years of life as a queen. But no, I love life. I love nature. I am hopeful. We are at a turning point, though, so we need to really decide where we stand. And unfortunately, if we want to sort it out, we have to give up some commodities that we now take for granted, but we shouldn't. So I always say to people, just start thinking about certain things that you do every day. Yeah, maybe one a day. Stop, think. Am I doing it right? What is the consequence of what I'm doing? Can I do it any other way? Can I sort this out? Do I really need what I'm having in the first place? Coffee. I forgot my reusable cup at home. Shoot, maybe I'll ask for one of their, recyclable cup. Actually, they're not that recyclable, by the way. But at that point, stop and think, do I actually really need this takeaway coffee? Or can I do without it for a day? Have that exercise, because I'm sure that it will make you feel good just understanding that you can give something up for the greater good, for as little as it is. And again, this is just an example, and it's not even, the most blatant one, but I think that helps. And then it's a journey. It's a journey of discovery, really. One thing leads to another and another and another. And off we go. Before you know it, you are making a huge difference.
So it's been such an interesting conversation. And I think you've touched on a lot of things in terms of where we're at and what could, potentially happen in the future. As you say, we're at a turning point in terms of ecology and, waste things and starting to really think about it. I guess looking forward as an artist, what's next for you? Are you still wanting to do your art, or is there things you still want to do, or conversations you still want to have with people?
Ooh. Wow. Okay. So, let's just start from saying that I didn't have it easy because for what I do, I challenge the art world constantly. I challenge its system. I challenge its style. I challenge its values in the sense that, art nowadays has to be like, for example, when I qualified in art, I re-qualified in mosaics and fine art. Now, already, mosaics is not really seen as a fine art in its own. So I'm already trying to push that boundary, make it disappear if I can. And actually, I'm pushing it both in the mosaic world, using tiles that are completely, don't exist in traditional mosaic, and the art world by using material as tiles in mosaic world. So that already has been quite a challenge. Secondly, of course, the fact that I believe that it's the need we have for perfection, or the fact that we're always striving for perfection in everything we do is actually the reason why we're finding ourselves in the sixth mass extinction. We don't make do. We don't accept. If something is not perfect, we throw it away. That is the basics of a throwaway culture, Or it's not perfect anymore, I'll throw it away and I'll get a new one. Whilst, of course, art is very much based on techniques, and I refuse that. So much so that sometimes if people can tell that it's made of rubbish, I make a point next time that I'll do a similar piece, if any, to make sure that, I have some more frayed edges or something that will show that, because also I think that we confuse so many times art with artworks. We think that artworks are the art, but those are just a vessel of art. Art in itself is what's behind, is the philosophy, is what the artist wants to communicate through the artworks. Do you see? So when you ask me what I want to do, is definitely continue this dialogue. The good thing is that finally I'm receiving recognition of different sorts, even from, some fine art establishments, which is great. But I'll keep doing it my own way anyway, and then we'll see where that leads me with the art world. But what I'm also doing at the moment is I just started a collaboration with Business School of Birmingham University. Birmingham Business School, basically, whereby we are discussing how to quantify new values based on nature and how to rethink our entire system as a holistic structure. And the paramount importance of art actually fostering empathy and new rules of evaluation and a new language of quantification, where art is both the subject and the object of this revolution. So it's extremely interesting. And actually, it was really heartwarming to see how, because I was approached by the university in the first place, the accounting department of all.
I was going to say, that's quite
fascinating. Apparently, they were telling me that actually we will be doing this discussion club, say, once in a few months, also with the University of Manchester, which is also a first as a collaboration. But they were telling me that although they have to teach traditional accounting because it's part of the curriculum, obviously, they are all focused, both university, on this new reevaluation, finding new values on which to base our system, which is, heartwarming to say the least.
And it's a shift. Like, you're seeing a shift, aren't you?
Yes, we need a shift from capitalism, quite frankly, because capitalism is based on infinite growth, which cannot exist on a finite planet to start with. And it's exactly what is driving nature berserk, It's the fact that we are consuming much more than what we should. And if we base it on profit rather than on the common good and on the lesser impact, on the ecosystem, obviously it's going to work against it. So so that I'm really focusing on. I'm also having a few collaborations again with the Institute, with Project One Wave, and with the Transport Museum, the London Transport Museum as well, in a program with schools. So that's also something that I treasure, because I don't know if you know, but I've been an art teacher as well at a primary school before, and I loved it. It was just too time consuming. It was just either that or continuing with my new things. And then, of course, I'll have a few solos. I have the collective to think about in June. I will have a few exhibitions also in Italy and Austria next year. I had to turn a few down this year, actually, because it's so full already. So it's going really well. I think people are really starting to appreciate, this.
I was going to say, the leveling of engagement is really quite amazing.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I don't know. It feels like, maybe it's a New Year's resolution, become more green, call Fran. Last week of January, I'm like, you want to do this, you want to do this? Like, wow, guys. So much so that I invested into a yearly planner, those that can be reused each year.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Let's just see what I'm doing here. Because, obviously I don't want to get into something that I cannot fulfill, at 200%. But yeah.
Well, great. Thank you. It's been so interesting speaking with you, and it's been quite the journey over this episode. So thanks for sharing your story and your passion around kind of, making trash valuable and making art really.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for having me. Anytime you want to keep on going with, I don't know, the veganism or any other discussion.
Definitely. Well, great. Well, thank you. It's been lovely to speak with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks for tuning in to my conversation with Francesca. Through her artworks, she enables us to reflect and also sparks conversations around our relationship with consumption and the materials we discard. More information on Francesca can be found in the show notes. In the final episode of the season, I'll be speaking with James Stedman. He's a theater maker and storyteller whose work touches on themes of class, mental health, and queerness. You don't want to miss it.